Hello everyone, it's Monday, back here to give you another awesome video on ASPD. Soon I'm going to be doing some video on other mental conditions because I also have comorbidities. I have, schizoaffective disorder, CPTSD from childhood abuse, and I also have, it's up in the air, I have a former diagnosis of bipolar disorder, but I may have mentioned I don't have the emotional ability of most people with bipolar, although I do have hypomania, but that can also happen from schizoaffective disorder. So I'm going to be doing some videos about how it affects the ASPD, some similarities between the two disorders, and just some kind of daily check-in stuff, things like that, because I think it's it's nice to have sort of a day-to-day check-in to see what it's like daily life as someone with a cluster B personality disorder and mental illness kind of thing. I'm fairly well controlled with medication, and I think that's important to keep in mind, because people who are not being responsible for their mental hygiene have a whole different experience than I do, and I have been there before. I've been unmedicated due to lack of insurance, which is extremely unpleasant for me. Some people have a different sensibility about medication, but I believe in better living through chemistry. But what I wanted to talk about today, I'm getting off track as I always do. It's like squirrel. There's so little research done about women in ASPD, and specifically both sociopathy and psychopathy. But there is one researcher who is very insistent upon the differences between male and female sociopathy, and that women are very under-researched. And his name is Boddy. It's either Bodie or Body, and I prefer to say Body just because it's funnier. And he has been doing research on the prevalence of female, not prevalence, but like how many more females there are with these disorders than people think. So he's done quite a bit, and I wanted to read an article about some of the research he's done. So give me a second here, I need to hydrate first. Okay. So let's see, the name of the article is Prevalence. It is Prevalence, I should have stuck with my original word. Prevalence of female psychopaths, more common than believed. Summary: researchers provide novel insights into female psychopathy, challenging the conventional 6-to-1 male to female psychopath ratio, with new evidence suggesting closer to 1.2-to-1 ratio, which is a pretty big, difference. Okay, the research indicates that societal gender biases have obscured the true nature and prevalence of female psychopaths, who often employ manipulation and seduction rather than violence to achieve their goals. Now, I'd like to just bring this up. As I mentioned before, I think oftentimes female ASPDers can be misdiagnosed, perhaps even as NPDers, narcissistic disorders, or BPD, because the fact that we do employ some narcissistic sounding tactics, such as seduction, using our appearance to reel people in, because, well, we are women, and that tends to be just in everyday life. Women and men behave differently because we have different strengths that we can play to, and with women, seduction is much more useful to us than going out there and being mouth breathery, thumping onto people with big clubs. That doesn't work for us, generally speaking. So that would make sense, right? So seduction and manipulation rather than violence to achieve our goals totally makes sense. This revelation not only calls for a reassessment of psychopathy across genders, but also signals significant implications for criminal justice and corporate leadership. Key facts: new ratio uncovered. Dr. Boddy's research suggests the real ratio of male to female psychopathy could be as low as 1.2-to-1, indicating female psychopaths are up to 5 times more common than previously thought. That's incredible. That is a huge difference. I mean, come on. I always thought that was true. As with many things, women are always under-researched and we are underestimated at all times with everything, in the medical industry and also in the the mental health industry. So 2, gender bias identification. Traditional psychopathy measures designed around male criminal behavior fail to capture the more manipulative and seductive tactics employed by female psychopaths. As I'm always saying, the research always has to do with incarcerated men, and it is not going to give us the information that we need when it comes to people, people who are not criminals, male and female, and just the female population, who tends to be a less incarcerated population, right? So, 3, implications for society and business. The underestimation of female psychopaths has serious repercussions for the criminal justice system and organizational leadership decisions, highlighting a need for gender-inclusive assessment methods. Female psychopaths are up to 5 times more common than previously thought, according to an expert who will present his work at Cambridge Festival later this month. I don't even know when this was made. It was actually not that long ago, but this is not happening this month. Current scientific evidence suggests that male psychopaths outnumber females by around 6 to 1. However, expert in corporate psychopathy, Dr. Clive Boddy of Anglia Ruskin University, argues that studies may be failing to identify female psychopaths because they are largely based around profiles of criminal and male psychopaths, as I just said. During his talk at ARU's Cambridge campus on Saturday, 16th March, Dr. Boddy will argue that the characteristics of female psychopaths differ from males, and that gender bias plays a role in the underreporting, with society ignoring what people perceive to be male traits when they are displayed by women. Dr. Boddy will present his own research, which shows that using measures of primary psychopathy, which exclude psychopathy's antisocial behavioral characteristics and concentrate on its core elements, the real ratio of male-female psychopathy may be about 1.2 to 1, up to 5 times higher than previously suggested. So it's just repeating itself, so we get it into our heads. Referencing research into corporate psychopaths and how they operate in high-achieving roles in the workplace, Dr. Boddy will explain how female psychopaths are more manipulative than males, use different techniques to create a good impression, and utilize deceit and sexually seductive behavior to gain social and financial advantage more than male psychopaths do. Dr. Boddy is the deputy head of the School of Management at Anglia Ruskin University, ARU, said, "People generally attribute psychopathic characteristics to males rather than females. So even when females display some of the key traits associated with psychopathy, such as being insincere, deceitful, antagonistic, unempathetic, and lacking in emotional depth, because they are seen as male characteristics, they may not be labeled as such, even when they should be. Also, female psychopaths tend to use words rather than violence to achieve their aims, differing from how male psychopaths tend to operate." Hello. If female psychopathy expresses differently, then measures designed to capture and identify male criminal psychopaths may be inadequate at identifying female non-criminal psychopaths. Female psychopaths, while not as severely psychopathic or as psychopathic as often as males are, have nevertheless been underestimated in their incidence levels and are therefore more of a potential threat to business and society than anyone previously suspected. Well, that's nice, thank you. This has implications for the criminal justice system because current risk management decisions involving partners and children may be faulty. It also has implications for organizational leadership selection decisions because female leaders cannot automatically be assumed to be more honest, caring, and concerned with issues such as corporate social responsibility. Well, okay. Dr. Clive Boddy has been researching the effects of having psychopaths in the workplace since 2005 and has published more on corporate psychopaths than any other academic. His research interests include toxic leadership and particularly the effects of corporate psychopaths on employees, organizations, and society. So, very interesting. So, as I've been saying this whole time, we are under-researched because we are women, and of course we are going to present differently than males because we tend to be less violent and not incarcerated, not in the criminal justice system nearly as often as men are, and that would make sense because we're different creatures than men. Hold on, I've got a notification here and that always drives me nuts. Yeah, so there's just so much, we're so under-researched, and because there are so many differences, there are just people, those women who are just going under the radar or being misdiagnosed as narcissistic, which really, even though there are some similar traits, it is a completely different, you know, cluster B personality disorder. Although, as I've been saying, you know, there is going to be some more, they're kind of putting everything in a more homogenized, or some people are trying to homogenize it more and having it be all under, like, even it is under a one umbrella, but, you know, making it less separated out. So, you know, on some level it's like fine, but still, before that happens, I believe that we need to be more thoroughly researched before that does happen, because women are so under-researched, and I think before we shove everything together in one big lump, the women need to be researched as separate disorders before that happens. That's just my view of it, because there are different not symptoms, but there's different personality traits that need to be looked into further. Because yes, absolutely, there are, I have certainly some what seem to be narcissistic traits myself, absolutely. You know, I am on some level overly concerned with looks, you know, and it doesn't have anything to do with, you know, even when I'm home right now and I've got eyeliner on and, you know, I'm dressed, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, it's also to film, but, you know, it does, you know, I'm concerned with, I have an eating disorder, and, you know, I'm concerned with staying under a certain weight. Part of it has to do with some abuse stuff that my mother put me through as well. But she also, I think I mentioned in a previous video, she was overly concerned with my looks and constantly put my looks down, and that contributes as well. But she was a narcissist, so it stands to reason that's going to carry over into my life and the way I am. She was very concerned with her looks and the way that she dressed, and she had to have designer clothing even though she couldn't afford it, you know. I don't care about designer clothing at all, personally. I just like to have, I've got a very distinct style though, which has always been my own, and it's, you know, that's just who I am, and I own that. It's kind of like my thing, you know. So yeah, I am, and the whole seductiveness and manipulation when it comes to the way I am with partners, in particular men, is very, very true. And that is overlooked. In fact, when I was having a conversation we were just discussing how we're in relationships in one of my groups for cluster Bs, I mentioned like how I tend to operate, and someone was like, oh, that's so classic BPD. I'm like, no, I'm psychopathy 1. And they were like, oh, because even people in our groups don't understand how women operate in psychopathy or in ASPD. They just judge it by the way men act, and it's like, not necessarily at all. Women have a certain way of operating, and that's how I've always been, and I am not BPD, you know. So it's interesting, you know, how that works, and how even people within our own community have a misunderstanding and don't even consider researching women as being a separate entity. And I think that that's unfortunate, and it can be very misleading, and honestly it kind of pisses me off, you know. I mean, I'm a kind of a hardcore feminist because you know, I'm so, particularly in this environment right now, the way men are acting is just kind of galling to me, because I have a very strong ego, and I have a sense of, you know, the way women are treated, and like, because it concerns me, you know. It might be completely egocentric, and it probably mostly is, but it's like, no, screw that, you know. I'm not going to be treated as a second-class citizen. I've never accepted that. And so it pisses me off that we are not treated as separate entities, because we certainly are, and we deserve to be heard and looked at as separate entities within the psychiatric community. Absolutely. And there needs to be more research done, and we need, not only do we need to be seen on a spectrum as not all being monsters, you know, but we also need to be seen separately as women and how we function within our personality disorders. So this guy Body, thank goodness, and it's a man, which is interesting that he's, you know, looking at us. Of course, he's kind of demonizing us, you know, in the corporate world. But, you know, baby steps, I guess. And it would be interesting to have, to be researched by women, as women, to see how we function, because a woman is going to have a better understanding. But even women researchers and women therapists and psychologists don't seem to have that understanding that we are definitely different. And if they do, like the ones on YouTube with like, oh, the women are like these femme fatales, which, you know, I've certainly used that term to describe how I am in relationships, but there's more to it than that, you know. We're not like that in every aspect of our lives. It's not all we are, you know. We don't walk around just seducing men all the time, and like, it's just not the way we are, you know. And I'm not someone who walks around stealing people's husbands. To me, that's not interesting, you know. I find that to be, you know, I do have my own set of criteria and my own set of standards. I have standards, you know, and my own moral code is something I do not break, you know, and I have my moral code for my own reasons, and I don't, you know, I have integrity when it comes to that, and I'm not interested in someone else's husband. So, you know, why would I be? That's someone else's deal and someone else's problem, you know. That's such a cliche. I am not interested in being a cliche. So, you know, and my thing is ethical non-monogamy, my thing is polyamory. I function better in that paradigm, and I think it's more, you know, I have more freedom, and I'm very interested in personal freedom. That's more my thing. And as I have grown older and as I've become more mature, if I'm going to be in a relationship, I want something out of it more than just, you know, manipulation tactics and getting something out of it that's, you know, merely for my own like monetary or entertainment gain. Like as I mentioned, like all humans want some sort of, you know, human interaction that's, you know, like real connection, you know. And so to me, that's the way I would get it. But I'm kind of going off topic now. Well, not particularly, not completely. I mean, we're talking about how women operate differently than men, and then, like, you know, so I do tend to go off in tangents though. But yes, we do need to be researched as separate entities, separate sexes. You know, absolutely, that's something that needs to be done. And there is so little research, even to this day, being done, and despite the fact that, you know, we've kind of exploded on social media, and when we are spoken about, you know, as like women, the differences are all have to do with sex, and that's it, you know. Just like the whole, like I said, the femme fatale thing, there's nothing much beyond that. And I think it needs to be explored that we are so similar to narcissists on that level of like our differences, because I find that very interesting because of the fact that I was raised by a narcissist. And I've mentioned before that, you know, oftentimes you do find people with ASPD have been raised by narcissists, and so that's an interesting correlation. All of this stuff is super fascinating to me, you know. I mean, I'm just fascinated by psychology and psychiatry to begin with, but women are underserved and under-researched in the medical field and the psychiatry field always. I mean, historically, and that is just ridiculous, because we are, you know, half the population, and we affect the world, particularly now. We're not just, you know, just sitting home. We do affect the world. We're in the corporate world. We are, you know, out there affecting people. We are mothers. We affect our children, which go out there and affect the world, you know. So we have an important role, and we need to be, you know, acknowledged and as such. So I'm going to be doing some more research on that to see if I can find anything else. You know, it's unfortunate that because of circumstances pretty much out of my control, I wasn't able to finish my education. You know, I have some education in psychology, and I wanted to be a psychiatric nurse, and so I do have some background educationally. Oh, it's always the cat hair, I swear. I love the little beast, but my God. And I do some research every single day, I mean every day, on this subject. But to have a formal education would have been nice, so I could go out there and make more of a difference. But we are, you know, this is where we are. So I'm hoping to influence some people out there who maybe are watching this and will take to heart what I'm saying and realize that I do have, you know, not only do I have my personal experience as someone with ASPD and psychopathy, but also someone who has some background educationally and does research every day. And I think it should be obvious that I do have a brain in my head, and I have some self-awareness and some, you know, I don't have, you know, I've got some egalitarian thought behind this. I'm not just demonizing us, nor am I glorifying us. You know, I see both sides. even though my word recall can be a bit wonky because I take topiramate and that does that to us, unfortunately. So occasionally my word recall, might be a little off, but I'm doing my best here. So that's what I wanted to give you guys today, is a little food for thought in terms of how women are, we do differ in terms of men when it comes to our disorders on all levels. And that needs to be taken into consideration, and there needs to be a lot more research done. Otherwise, we're not going to get a full picture of the disorders. We just simply can't. And then then it'll be interesting to look at, trans people, to see how they, which do they lean more towards? Like someone who's a trans woman, do they lean more towards the behaviors of a, someone who was born a woman, or do they lean more towards male behavior? I'm going to assume probably more towards female, because someone who's trans generally tends to be feeling like they're a female since an early on, but I'm just guessing. However, it would be good to know, right? There's all kinds of populations we could be looking into here. So, it's fascinating stuff, and it needs to be researched. We need to be seen as more holistically, instead of just these villainized, demonized creatures, or some sort of like anti-heroes, like American Psycho and Joker and all that ridiculous nonsense, and we're not just the BTK, we're not just Ted Bundy. We are, the majority of us are not going around killing anybody, and necessarily destroying lives left and right. So, nor are all of us abusive people, like physically horribly abusive people. So, and I guess that's pretty much what I needed to say. So hopefully this was helpful, and a little bit of food for thought, and hopefully we can get a little bit more research done. And I'm certainly going to do some more on my own. And that is all for right now, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good day. Bye.